Okay, the mainstream media push fake news in two different ways. The first way we're very familiar with. They spin the stories. They make up some of the reporting. They exaggerate other parts of the reporting, right? The first part is how they report the stories. But the second part of how the left pushes fake news is actually more important than that, and that is how they select the stories that they're going to cover. So it's not even in how they report it. It's in the very fact that they are reporting some stories and that they are not reporting other stories. Case in point, great example of this, is a very sad local story, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. This is the big story that blew up over the weekend. It's got everybody at everybody's throats, and I think pretty much everybody is missing the point, at least as a matter of national political perspective. What do we know about the Ahmaud Arbery shooting? Two white guys shot and killed a black guy named Ahmaud Arbery. The guys were tailing Arbery in a car. This is in Georgia. The two guys had their guns out, right? So they were brandishing weapons. Arbery knew that they had weapons. There was a tussle for one of the guns, and Arbery ended up dead. And we know all of this because one guy, a third guy, filmed it for some reason. Actually, that does sort of play a role in how we think about the case. But that's pretty much all that we know about it, right? Then, predictably, left-wingers pushed this narrative that this was a modern-day lynching, that Ahmaud was out minding his own business, out for a jog, and these two crypto-Klansmen came up and lynched him. Then some right-wingers pointed out that Arbery had an arrest record, that he had been poking around a house that was an open construction site in the neighborhood, and all of which, I guess, tells us something about the left-wing narrative. Doesn't really tell us much about the case itself, though, right? Just because a guy has an arrest record, just because he's poking around a house that's under construction in the neighborhood, that doesn't justify killing him, does it? No, I don't think any of us would say that. So then, three questions about the incident itself. Was it murder? Possibly. It was possibly murder, but I don't know that they're going to get very far, the prosecutors, if they push this idea that it's murder. Because if it was just murder, if these two guys were out there trying to snipe down a black man going for a job, they probably would have killed him sooner, wouldn't they? They had the open shot, they were trailing him, but they waited until he grabbed for a weapon, and then there's this tussle that happens off camera, and then he dies. Is that going to stick as a murder charge? Possibly, but that's a tougher case to make. Also, if it was murder, they probably wouldn't have filmed it, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't want to film yourself committing a crime on camera. Was it manslaughter? That seems more likely. These guys were out. They were being vigilantes. They were following this guy who they suspected of committing a non-violent crime, and so they didn't actually want to shoot him. But then, Arbery feels like he's pinned into a corner, so he grabs the gun. Reasonable thing to do, and then there's this tussle, and somehow Arbery ends up dead. That seems far more likely to me in terms of something that's going to stick for a prosecutor. I guess the third option is, was it justified? This seems the least likely by far to me. If the crime he's being accused of is nonviolent, and we don't even know if Arbery committed a nonviolent crime, then that wouldn't justify killing, right? Nobody would suggest that. Probably people think that these two guys were overstepping. They should have waited for the police to get there. So probably that's not going to work. Okay. From a national political perspective, none of this is the primary question. I think most of the discussion of the Arbery killing ends there. Was it murder? Was it manslaughter? Was it justified? He had an arrest record. None of that is the point. Okay. I actually don't really want to talk about the Arbery case. I think the Arbery case is a local, very sad local story. I want to talk about the fact that we're talking about the Arbery case. Why are we talking about this? There are 53 homicides in the United States every single day. Why this one? Why did this one blow up as the big news story of the weekend? It's because it supports a left-wing race narrative. LeBron James is the king of this. LeBron tweets out, "We're literally hunted every day, every time we step foot outside the comfort of our homes. Can't even go for a damn jog, man. Like, WTF, man, are you kidding me? with like 7 exclamation points and question marks. No, man, for real, are you kidding me? 5 exclamation points. I'm sorry, Ahmaud. Rest in paradise, and my prayers and blessings sent to the heavens above, to your family. Then it's a prayer hand, then it's a black power hand, then it's a red heart. Hashtag stay woke. Hashtag profiled because we are simply black. Then 2 crying faces. That's not true. What he tweeted out is not true. LeBron James is not hunted down every time he leaves his home. The statistics are clear. There is no epidemic of racist whites hunting down innocent black guys in the United States. It doesn't happen. You can look at the statistics. It's not true. On top of that, on this specific case, we know of very few people. How many people could you imagine in this country would support the unjust killing of a man? Very few people. The reason stories like this get attention is because they are exceedingly rare. So what's the takeaway here? The takeaway is this is a very sad local story that is made into a national story to push a left-wing race narrative. And we should not fall into the trap of encouraging that. I almost wasn't even going to talk about this because I don't want to encourage the left making a spectacle out of these sad local stories to push a narrative. But I think it's important because you've got to be aware when the left does it. Every time the left is pushing some story like this, a story that is obviously very emotional, very sad, very dramatic, but again, local, not indicative of broader trends, not relevant to questions of national politics or international politics. Every time they're doing that, it's because they don't want you to be looking at another story.